Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Investigator Resources webinar presentation. Today, we've got Andrew McElwain, the Managing Director, who is here to talk to us about the latest MRE upgrade and what we have to look forward to for the rest of 2023. Andrew?
Oh, thank you very much, Kylie, and thank you very much to NWR for hosting this video conference as well. Good morning to our listeners. And it's a great opportunity because last week we announced to the market an upgrade to, or an update to our mineral resource at our Paris Silver Project. And I always point out the attributes of the Paris Silver Project, which is the image behind me here, which one of the things that will assist in approvals for development of this project is it's in non-arable land. There are no watersheds, no downstream water users, and no communities that are directly impacted by this. In fact, the closest house to this project is 26 kilometres away. So I always refer to Paris being an easy project to approve and develop, in contrast to some of the other projects that might be on the eastern seaboard that do have downstream water users and some of those intimate community challenges. But most importantly, what does underpin our Paris project is the mineral resource. And as Kylie mentioned, we updated that and provided that to the market last week. In total, 57 million ounces of silver and 99,000 tonnes of lead in the resource. That sort of in round terms is about $2.3 billion worth of metal in the ground. And just to give you a proportion, $2 billion worth of silver and $300 million worth of lead in today's prices. What we undertook over the last 6 to 8 months was a program of extensional drilling to the existing resource, and that was a consequence of us being able to negotiate access to an area that had been previously identified by traditional owners as of interest to them. We worked with those traditional owners, the Gawler Ranges Aboriginal Corporation, during 2022 to get the area reassessed, and ultimately in October last year, the Gawler Ranges group acknowledged that there was really no particular interest in this area and that they allowed us to get onto that ground and in fact start doing some drilling, which we did straight away in November. We postponed that drilling over Christmas and went back and we finished the drilling there in February. Collected all the data together. It goes through the process that our geologists go through with QA/QC, the quality assurance, quality control, and that data was then presented to our resource estimator. They go away and with their little magic wand and produce a number, which is what we presented to the market last week. Importantly, we increased the number of ounces in the mineral resource estimate from 53 million to 57 million. I know there was some people predicting a much higher uplift in our resource, but one of the other things we also did was not only drill the 250-metre extension to the south of Paris, we also went back and did some more confirmatory drilling, both within and on the edges of the Paris resource. And what that's ultimately done is given us far more confidence of the grades that we would see in a mine plan going forward. And if you look at the presentation, what we did do was certainly increase the indicated classification, the higher confidence material in the majority of the centre of the resource, and that gives us this greater certainty about what we would be able to deliver in a mine plan. Really important for us, that then really sets the underpins the definitive feasibility study that we're working on at the moment. And some of the elements of that definitive feasibility study are going on in the background, and they're not particularly newsworthy to the market, but they're certainly very important components of the study that we need to deliver to the regulator for approval. A couple of those things we are doing in the background, we did put a release out about the water drilling and pump testing. That has two components. We have drilled both dewatering and observation bores in the Paris project, and that's both along the line of the resource and both on either side. So we understand how the water table will behave as we dewater and mine the open pit. But also one of the other quandaries is, whilst it is quite an arid land, there's no freely available water source. And we had identified what we referred to as a paleo channel, which is a body of water about 12 kilometres to the north. We've drilled both dewatering or water wells there and observation wells. And at the moment, we're going through a 3-week program of pumping. We're going to draw that water table down, see how long it takes to recharge, understand what capacity we have to deliver water from that, and that water source will be what we use for the process plant at Paris. So hydrological program is underway. Also, we're just about to kick off an updated environmental study of the project. There was a baseline study done a number of years ago. There aren't any particularly threatened species of either flora or fauna in the district. We have to reaffirm that. Since 2013, some flora and fauna have gone onto the list and some others that have come off. So we actually have to update that study. And we'll do that in two parts, one starting in August and then another one later in the year during spring. So we get a balance of those seasons. So things happening in the background, not particularly newsworthy, but the key thing is the update of the mineral resource estimate. And that underpins our path going forward. Part of the other work we're doing behind the scenes, always said there's lead in this. We want to see how we can recover some value from the lead. I mentioned $300 million worth of in-ground lead value. Even if we're able to recover half of that, that'll ostensibly pay for the capital cost of the processing plant. So lead recovery test work is underway. We have samples going down to the ALS laboratory in Burnie. They're flotation experts, and we'll get some answers from that shortly. And certainly that will be some newsworthy information we'll put out once we get those lead results. Lots of things, a bit the proverbial duck on the pond, lots of things happening under the water, but certainly we're advancing the project such that we expect to complete the definitive feasibility study early 2024, and that will then set the path forward for regulatory approval and financing of the project. That's it in a snapshot, Kylie.
And thank you, Andrew. That was a great summary on the MRE upgrade. So we've got a few questions. Now, the first question is, what does the updated resource estimate mean for the project in terms of the plan definitive feasibility study? Do you see it as improving the economics?
Look, certainly that's part of the process we'll work through, and with a larger resource to deal with, we certainly expect to improve the project output. Interestingly, if I refer back to, the pre-feasibility study, whilst there were 53 million ounces in resource, the pre-feasibility study only mined about 28 million of those. So there's opportunity as we can bring lead revenue to the table. We can also increase the value of ore blocks in the ground, so we expect to be able to mine more ounces. One of the interesting things when we started this step-out drilling, we actually jumped out 200 metres. We drilled some holes, saw some silver. We actually jumped out another 50. We still have silver in those last row of holes. So we'll also look to drill past that at some stage. So there might well be an extension to the resource again in the future.
All right, for the second question we've got, the cutoff grade has been reduced to 25 grams per tonne. What is the rationale for that?
Sure, and lots of work goes in behind the scenes to understand at what point, because if you reduce the cutoff grade to zero, you can have an infinite number of ounces. But we had previously reported the resource at a 30-gram cutoff grade, and that was assuming we didn't have any contribution from lead. As I mentioned, we expect to be able to bring to the table some revenue from lead, so it's appropriate for us to look at a lesser cutoff grade, which we still believe has an economic potential.
Right, and another question. What scope is there to expand the forecast mine life at Paris on the evidence of recent drilling results at Paris and Apollo?
Sure, look, I probably jumped ahead and answered part of that question already in that, as we expect, we've found that there was silver in the last row of holes that we drilled, so it may well be something further to the south. Probably not east and west. Some of the confirmatory holes we drilled have constrained the edges of the pit. And out to Apollo, we still haven't got our head around what the beast might be out there. We're not finding continuous mineralisation, but there's certainly enough out there to encourage us to go back again. But we've really got to focus on getting Paris moving, because there's no point in finding, unless we find another 50 million ounces at Apollo. But we need to get the Paris project to underpin any development in the region. But we'll be back looking at Apollo. We've got some plans about what we might be doing there to try and chase up and we've had some spectacular silver intersections at Apollo. Also have a number of other prospects on the Peter Lumbo lease that will also follow up in the next 12 months.
And another, you have spoken about the Paris and silver. However, what is the latest on the Molly Hill tungsten project?
Oh, look, yeah, the intent was only to provide a resource update on Paris, but certainly Molly Hill. The interesting thing about Molly Hill is, as always said, we have a very low entry cost point. For $1 million of expenditure, we can own 25% of that. Fortunately, we've been granted co-funding by the Northern Territory Government to undertake a gravity survey over the project area and beyond. And in conjunction with that, we'll be out on the ground in about August, we expect, with some drilling. We want to do some confirmatory drilling on the resource so that we can then requote the resource or represent the resource by the end of the year. So some regional work. We also have a really significant magnetic target that we'll drill at the same time. So plenty of drilling news flow coming out of Molly Hill.
Wonderful. And finally, what can shareholders expect in the coming weeks and months at the Paris project as the Paris project continues to develop?
Yeah, well, we'll certainly make sure that we keep everyone informed. Our quarterly will be out by the end of the month. There shouldn't be any news that hasn't gone to the market, but we'll be providing updates on the hydrological program. We'll continue to inform the market as to where we move forward with the environmental review. Certainly the big ticket item we're going to be looking for is the lead recovery opportunities. And then, as I said, there's some drilling information that we'll be putting out from the Molly Hill program. So plenty of news flow over the next 6 months towards the end of the year.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for coming online today to discuss the silver project, Andrew. And thank you everyone for joining us online today. If you have any specific questions that you would like answered, please feel free to send them through to Kylie at nwrcommunications.com. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Kylie, thank you very much for hosting this, and thank you to everyone listening in. I always say if you're thinking about investing in silver, you should be investing in Investigator. And if you look today, silver price is up a little. It's starting to get closer to $35 an ounce in Australian dollars, and our share price is up. So I keep saying we move in lockstep with the silver price. So thinking silver, think Investigator.